Rim.
So I want to ask about the story of how this came together. I had just heard that at the mountains, Madness sort of fell apart and things were going, and Pacific Rim just sort of came together. Is that the story of how this developed?
I started developing Pacific Rim many months before, but I was already involved on mountains. So I said to Legendary, look, I'll produce it, I'll co-write it, and if you wait for me, I'll direct it. And Thomas, cruelly but accurately, said, well, and if Mountains doesn't happen, would you direct it? I said, yes. If I'm available, I would love to direct it. Then he did two things that were very smart. He engaged me and he paid for an art department to work out of my home. I have a home office, and I gathered this group of designers, and we designed all the Jaegers, all the robots, all the monsters in my garage. And we created a little teaser, and by the time we were done with that, many months of that, and many months of me co-writing with Travis, I was madly in love with Pacific Rim, and he knew it. But by then I was prepping Mountains of Madness, Jim Cameron, Tom Cruise, Universal, Don Murphy, Susan Montford. And when Mountains collapsed on a Friday, my first phone call on Saturday was from Thomas. I said, okay, now that it collapsed, are you ready now to do Pacific Rim? And I said, let's meet on Monday. And we met on Monday and we shook on it.
And did you, someone was saying that you used the same crews and you used the same sort of, and it was just a shift of everything?
Yeah. I mean, I used Guillermo Navarro. I started with Carol Spear, the movie I had done, Mimic, Blade 2, with her. And, I used the same designer for the wardrobe that I had in The Hobbit, even if it didn't happen, was the same designer. And I just moved my designers here.
Yeah. One of the things that fascinates me about all your work is how many projects you have your hands in. And not only just because it's great to have your hand in something in what you bring to it, but my question for you and what I want to talk about is just how do you balance all of that? How do you balance, how much time you need to dedicate to one?
Life balances it for you.
Okay.
For example, we wrote 3 drafts of the Hulk, and that's it. David Icke and I co-wrote those 3 drafts. That never came to fruition. So that project may be on the list, but it's not been active for over almost 2 years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Pinocchio, we wrote that movie, we designed the basics, we put together a budget, we're waiting for it to be financed. So it's in the list, it may happen, but it's not alive right now. And all those things have a time. If you imagine that they go like this, and none of them go up the same time.
Right.
They're all going up when the other one's going down, and you're always busy. That's the rule. You're always busy. You don't have vacation time.
Right. Of course.
You're a terrible family. You're a horrible son. You're a horrible friend, but you keep busy all the time.
Well, but that's what I mean. How do you balance a life like that? And how do you have a family? I mean, how do you?
I have an incredibly great wife and daughters. Very patient. One day they're gonna kick me out. They grew up in a circus.
Okay.
They travel with me. We move countries every year.
Wow.
We live in Toronto one day. We live in Budapest another. We live in Madrid. They travel with me. They love it. And we are the most important thing to each other.
Yeah. Well, I think that sort of foundation plays a lot into who you are and sort of the stories you tell and sort of what happens in the end. Yeah. You mentioned this a little bit earlier. I want to bring this up again, but in the development process of Pacific Rim, I was going to ask what the first sort of design ideas that came to mind, and you mentioned the Jaegers, and I wanted to ask specifically, were you casting people to play and drive the Jaegers before you developed them, or was it you had the Jaegers and then you're going to fit someone into it? No,
we had the Jaegers and then fit somebody into it, because the Jaegers, what we did is animate. We did send ILM, for example, the live footage of the pilot, so they could pick some traits of the pilot. But we designed the Jaegers to represent each country. For example, Gypsy Danger is modeled after the Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building, and John Wayne. If you see the movie again,
Yeah.
Gypsy walks like a gunslinger.
Yeah.
With a little bit of a hip movement, and the Australian Jaeger moves in a completely different way, very
Right.
testosterone driven, and is modeled after a Land Rover, a 4x4, and is painted in the Australian outback colors.
Right.
The Chinese robot is modeled after a medieval battle armor from China, and it moves like a martial artist, you know.
Yeah.
And finally, like Cherno Alpha, it looks like a walking tank with a nuclear reactor on top, and it's painted in the pattern of the T-tank series, the Russian,
Right.
and the interiors are based on the cosmonaut space program machines and so forth. So you base them on real machines. We accessed and printed an archive of big machines, submarines, nuclear reactors, giant planes, bomber planes. Gypsy's painted like a World War II fighting plane, and you can see the nose art of the girl with the gun.
Yeah.
You know.
There's a lot of little cool details. I mean, I love the details you put into your world anyway, and how much attention you put into everything, not only physically on set, but then effects-wise.
Well, I was really taken by when I was a kid. I saw Star Wars, and I went around the block and I saw the movie 4 times the same day.
Yeah.
Like literally 10 o'clock. I saw it at 10 o'clock. My head exploded. I went around the block, came back to I saw it again. My mind exploded again. I saw it again, and 2 lessons that Lucas did brilliantly in that movie is make the universe feel used, old and battered, and the second one is start the tale in the middle. Don't make it an origin movie. Make it the middle of it, so it feels like a serialized adventure, you know. And I really wanted Pacific Rim to feel like you were starting the adventure in the middle.
Do you think, in today's day and age, that we still can, blow away people's minds, kids' minds, like Star Wars did? Are we still capable of that?
I don't know if we can do something that big. I mean, I have no idea. I actually would get paralyzed thinking something like that.
Yeah.
But I know one thing. I think if I was a kid today, if any kid that watches Pacific Rim, I'm pretty sure, male kids at least, their heads are going to explode.
Yeah.
You know, because it has the most basic sense of fun and scale I can deliver, or anyone can deliver. And I work together with some of the best minds ever in creating this. You know, everybody in the design team, in the cinematography, in the special effects, set design.
Yeah. Well, it seems like there's so much pressure in Hollywood to make something that's satisfying on a mass scale.
Yeah.
Whereas I see the greatest success and the greatest films that push things are those that don't have that limit, where it's truly about the vision and what you and what the filmmakers want to achieve.
It is 50% that and 50% pure confluence of luck and factors that you have no control over. I mean, you can have a world-changing event happen that weekend. You can have, for example, I've had movies open in the middle of a storm that blows up all the theaters in the East Coast. That happened to me as a producer, and we lost 30% of our revenue. So you never know. I mean, my analyst once told me, he said, do not confuse process with outcome. Concentrate on the process, whatever the outcome is.
Interesting.
And I think it's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah.
Anything, the result for me on Pacific Rim is Pacific Rim. I'm so happy with the movie. I'm hoping audiences discover it, but the movie is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
No, I agree with you. I want to ask, speaking of the process, how do you balance the budget? Because that seems like, especially with Pacific Rim, that seems like a major issue in terms of not only realizing how much effects work you have to do and how much ILM costs, but also how much your actors cost and how much the sets will cost and how much every piece to pull off, your grand vision.
I'm as much a producer as I am a director. I produce, and I'm always, even in the movies where I'm not credited as producer, I'm fiscally very, very involved in the budgeting. And it's very simple. My father, when I worked for my father, who's the worst boss I've ever had, he told me there are 2 columns here, what we have and what we owe. When you owe more, have less. In other words, if I go a day over in a sequence, I got to balance by taking a day out of a sequence, whether I want it or not. And the result is, in a movie like this, we ended up under schedule and under budget. Yeah,
Wow.
I don't think there's many movies in this scale that can say that.
Yeah.
And we were never over on VFX, never, and we always managed. And I think it's because I wanted to show, I really want to show that I can deliver huge spectacle in a big sandbox, and it is my hope that that will give me permission to do bigger movies like Mountains of Madness that are a little more crazy.
Yeah.
But not gonna wood.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, is there ever going to be a day where we'll see At the Mountains of Madness?
Oh, last question. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, is there ever a day we'll see Mountains of Madness?
I hope so. I mean, Don Murphy and Susan Montfort, who are producing with me, they'll never give up.
Right.
I mean, Don is, if anyone knows Don is absolutely tireless. I mean, as soon as I have an opening on a weekend, are we shooting Mountains of Madness? I go, do it.
Good.
Let's do it right. Let's
Right.
wait. But he's a force of nature, that guy.
Cool. Well, I hope we see it one day.
Me too, man.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.